Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for checking it out if you're new. Doctor Who Series 14, Episode 5, Dot and Bubble. This is another one where we've got a bit of a Doctor Light episode, not a lot of Doctor in the actual episode itself. Overall, to get it out of the way, I go back and forth on this episode. While watching it, I didn't like it. I found it annoying and frustrating, mostly because Lindy is a incredibly annoying character. But at the end of the episode, it all brings it together, and so it actually does serve a bit of a really good purpose. So let's get right on into it. So you might be wondering, what is Dot and Bubble? And you see, Dot and Bubble is a social media device that, basically puts this bubble around your head. Dot is like the AI little bead that follows you around. And the bubble is like your social media feed, your FaceTime with your friends and how you go about your day. It gives the users of Find Time their daily instructions. It literally tells them, forward, 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 left, left. They have no autonomy of their own. They just follow whatever Dot tells them to do. And so with that, we open this episode following a character known as Lindy, who immediately gets a call from the doctor. And what does she do but block him and, denies his call. Which we learn later is because she's a racist piece of shit. But Ruby is able to infiltrate the group. And at first, you don't think much of it. You think, the racism might not have clicked right away at that first one for some people. And I admit for myself, it didn't either. I thought it was because the doctor immediately comes in like, oh, hey, you're in danger, run. Versus Ruby comes in pretending to be like an IT. Like, oh, we hear there's been some issues with the dots. Can you tell me about your dot? But it's actually because Ruby's white. So we learn pretty quickly that these dot users have to go to work, for 2 hours a day. However, slowly but surely, Lindy's friends are slowly disappearing. And we learn that it's because there are these creatures that are eating all the users. And with these creatures comes more racism. Because, they're like these slug-like creatures who eat the users who literally aren't paying attention, because they can't see because they're dot, and they just walk right into the creature's mouth. And so, literally, the doctor calls her trying to offer her help, and Lindy immediately, because she's racist, says oh, you're with the slugs, you're helping them, to the doctor. And overall, like I said, at the beginning of the episode, because of the, covered eyes with the dot, I thought the dot was going to be the big, talking point of the episode. It was going to be a commentary on social media and how people use social media as an escape from reality to ignore the horrors of the world. And you could say that is still here, but not the only takeaway from this episode. So we learn a little bit about Find Time. That's the city that we're in. And so they tell us that Find Time is surrounded by the wild wood and protected by a force field. It's this perfect utopia. Perfect utopia. Eesh. And so, it's full of all the rich kids from a planet they called their homeworld. They are all 17 to 27. And you might notice something while watching the episode. Something about all of the characters. And that's that it's only the white kids. Which Lindy makes the passive-aggressive remark of, it's the people who could afford it. Because, yeesh. So, the kids on this planet spend their time partying. They have to work 2 hours a day to charge their dot, and otherwise they just continue about their day. And during all this, when the doctor and Ruby are trying to help Lindy figure out how to avoid the slugs, Lindy calls her mother, and her mother is played by none other than who? Susan Twist. And what I thought was really interesting here was that, we've had Susan Twist popping up, and obviously, like I said, Russell T Davies was just joking when he said, we ran out of actors and used Susan Twist over and over. Because both the Doctor and Ruby acknowledge her this time. We had Ruby acknowledge her last week in 73 Yards, And the doctor says it this week, where he's like, oh, that was the ambulance. And Ruby's like, no, but I recognize her from, 73 yards. And so there is definitely a Susan twist coming in these final episodes. And I'm glad to hear the doctor and Ruby both acknowledging it. Versus how I said Ruby being able to make it snow hasn't really been touched on as much, like that mystery. And during this time when the doctor and Ruby are trying to help Lindsay, we get it very blatantly obvious that Lindsay is a racist piece of shit. She is constantly making passive-aggressive remarks, microaggressions, at the doctor. Like, for example, how I said at the beginning of the episode, she blocks the doctor. She then realizes, the doctor is the person who called her at the beginning. And she makes the fucking remark of, oh, I thought you just looked the same. Yeah, like, oh my god. So fucking ignorant. And you could say it's because these children are sent to Finetown, where they live in a bubble. They don't learn about people of color or anything because, the racism is baked in and ugh. But, she makes remarks like, I was so right to mute you. And then when she adds her friends to the call, she's like, I know it's wrong for him to be here. We'll discipline him later. Which is terrifying to hear in modern day. And she talks about, he's not as stupid as he looks. Which, again, Jesus fucking Christ. But also, as she said, as he looks. She's basing off of his appearance. Doesn't know a thing about him. She's just a racist piece of shit. And throughout the episode, there's been this character, this singer, this pop star named Ricky September. And Ricky September eventually shows up to rescue Lindy. And I fully admit, Lindy running into the light post because she doesn't have her dot telling her where to go did get a laugh out of me. And honestly, it's funnier now knowing that she's a racist piece of shit. And so I spent this whole episode hoping she'd get eaten. But, it was interesting to see her react, the first time touching someone. Which, initially, is where you think, oh, that's why she acted. Because earlier she also questioned, Ruby and the doctor being in the same room. And, at the time, and especially after this interaction, you think it's because, oh, she doesn't think people should be together. She's confused by that, and that's why. When really it was her, oh my goodness, this black man and this white woman in the same room? Get out of there, lady. But Ricky seems to actually be chill. I would have been curious to see his reaction to the doctor, because Ricky talks about how, I live outside my dot. I use my dot to upload my music, and then I spend my time reading books and studying art. And so I would have been curious to see his interactions with the doctor and what he would have done. Oh, I guess actually the doctor and Ricky do see each other, now that I think about it, because the doctor makes the talks about how, oh, he's hot. He is a looker, and he's smart. And I guess Ricky doesn't have any crazy reaction to the doctor at the time. He's less aggressive than Lindy, but he's not, overtly. There is almost still some holdback. He's not sure how to approach the situation. But then we learn from the doctor that the creatures are eating the kids in alphabetical order, and that Lindy is next. And that is because we learn that the creatures... The episode's not totally clear, which Doctor Who has never been totally clear when it comes to explaining things. But Dot, we learned that these creatures were basically either designed or captured and sent by Dot, the little bead that follows them around. Because, as the Doctor explains it, Dot has grown to hate them after listening to them and their non-stop bullshit, because they are just constantly socializing and partying, like they said. And so I can imagine the Dot just got sick of dealing with these teens, these racist, ignorant teens, no less. And so it was funny to see Dot go full Terminator. The little light turns red and it starts... I thought it was going to shoot something, but it literally propels itself. It's got enough force that when Ricky hits it with the pipe, it goes through the wall and things like that. And honestly, during that scene, I didn't think Lindy was going to be able to open the door, because it had to be it would say a number and you'd have to type the number in. She was too stupid to do all the other stuff, almost too stupid to live. But she was able to get that correctly. I guess you could say fight or flight, life or death scenario. But ultimately, the door doesn't open fast enough, and Lindy actually sacrifices Ricky to live, which this is where the episode gets scary. It is scary how well she plays it off afterwards, but also how heartlessly she does it, which I guess is, again, the commentary on privileged little white girl that will always put herself first, because, it's going in alphabetical order by last name, and she's, supposed to be next, and then she's like, wait, he's Ricky, he's Ricky September, but his real name's Combs. See, go after, get him, his last name comes before mine. And so then Dot does turn and kill Ricky, and Ricky can't believe that Lindsay would do that to him. I keep saying Lindsay, it's because Lindy, they're right there, they're so close. But then Lindy gets to the door, and there the doctor, Ruby, and the other survivors are waiting. And that's where, like I said, it's scary. Almost, what would you say, is it sociopath or psychopath? Where Lindy literally is just like, oh, Ricky didn't come through. He went to go save someone else. He said to go on without him. And it's like, oh my god. That's terrifying. And so the survivors have the plan to go into the wild woods, to leave Finetown behind, and go off and live their pioneer lives like our great fathers before us. And that's where we get the hint of, the pioneers weren't exactly good people, especially the white ones. Then the Doctor and Ruby offer to transport the survivors off-world. This planet is covered in the slugs. You won't be safe here. What if we take you with us and drop you off on a safer planet with clean water, habitable civilization? And that's where the racism outright makes itself. In case you hadn't picked up on it earlier, this is where the racism comes full-blown. They start, oh, you can't go with, I would never go with someone like you. It would be inappropriate. He's going to corrupt you. Get away from him. And the Doctor is better than me. Because right there, that's when it'd be fine. Let him go. Leave. Get in the TARDIS. Let him die. And Ruby can't believe it either. And Ruby immediately goes to comfort the Doctor. And it is interesting to see this reaction, because racism, like I said, doesn't ever make sense. There's no real way to justify racism. And so, with that, the Doctor can't believe it. I'm the guy who can save your planet. I can save your lives. But because of the color of my skin, you won't let me. And he even begs them. He says, if you'll just allow me to save your lives. Because, he can't force them to be saved. And ultimately, they make the choice to leave anyways. That they would rather go off and risk getting eaten by slugs than travel with this black man in his spaceship. And ultimately, that leaves the viewer and the Doctor wondering, did the Doctor save the real monsters by helping the people of Finetown find the exit? The Doctor really struggles with this, because this is the first time he's ever failed to save someone because of his physical appearance. The Doctor is how old now at this point? Racism, bigotry, sexism, they aren't new concepts to the Doctor. The Doctor is aware that they exist, but he himself has never experienced it firsthand. And he is shocked. He goes through, almost all of the cycles of grief right there in that moment of trying to bargain with them. He's angry, he's sad, he's confused, And I know some people might say that, oh, you said no doctor would have to experience this, but there is the fugitive doctor, Joe Martin. But the fugitive doctor, the doctor doesn't have those memories. It was established during Flux, or I don't know. The Timeless Child stuff gets a little bleh. End of Series 12 / into Flux, they explain that the Doctor doesn't have those memories. Those memories were erased. The Doctor was basically factory reset at William Hartnell. And so the Doctor doesn't know how to handle any of this. And Ncuti, and I know, I'm sorry, I've been saying his name wrong, but so has he. Ncuti Gatwa. In a recent interview, he acknowledged that he had been saying his name wrong the last few years, and his mother had pointed out. Most people, myself, have been saying Ncuti. There's actually an N in front of there. It's a very subtle, like Ncuti Gatwa. And so Ncuti sells it really well, because he shows that grief and that rage. He's screaming. First he starts to laugh, like he can't believe it. Like he's laughing at this insanity, but then he starts to scream, and the spit goes flying out of his mouth, and Ruby attempts to comfort him, because I'm sure Ruby is no stranger to racism, both just living on Earth and growing up with a black mother. And so and the confusion, like I said, racism doesn't make sense, and that rage the Doctor has is, after everything he did for these people, they don't see him as a hero because of how he looks. And he that last shot of where he gets in the TARDIS, disappointed, defeated, mad, it really sticks with you. Heavy stuff, where, like I said, I was annoyed following Lindy all episode, but to see the Doctor's, rage and grief at the end really made it all worth it. And the Doctor cries again. Like I said, the Doctor has cried in every episode except for 73 Yards, because he's only in that episode for like a minute. But yeah, this Doctor is someone who has to learn. I think it's really something interesting, because we did explore like sexism with the Judy Whittaker era. But like I said, racism, the Doctor has touched on it all the time and talked about how it's silly and things like that. But the Doctor has never experienced that firsthand. And the fact that these people wouldn't be saved because of how he looks kind of almost breaks him. I fully admit it caught me off guard. I didn't think we were going to go somewhere like that, at least not in the first series with only 8 episodes. But overall, I did enjoy the episode because of this. Like, upon rewatching it a second time for this video, it really sticks with you, and you might not pick up on the microaggressions, but if you were kind of 50-50 on the other, I'd say give it another chance, because like I said, the second rewatch, you really pick up on those microaggressions, and you're like, wow, yikes. And I told my friends, this episode really raises your blood pressure. It makes you mad, but it's supposed to. And that's what makes it pretty good. So, we're down to just 3 episodes left this season. I am curious what we'll see next week. Because, again, as I've said every video, the finale is 2 parts. So really, we only have next week left as our final fun journey with the Doctor. This is where, like I said, I do hesitate on this season being too short. Because an episode like this is really heavy, but very Doctor-light. We have not had a lot of Ncuti Gatwa, I feel like, in his premiere season. We had 2 episodes back-to-back with very little Doctor. And so, I do wish we had had maybe an episode or 2 in between or after this that really gave him that chance to shine. But those are just some of my thoughts on this week's episode of Doctor Who. Let me know what you thought of Dot and Bubble in the comments down below. If you liked what you saw here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know when that next one's coming. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.